All right, Richard, when you're ready.
Great. Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Richard Starnes, and I am the president of the 501 Commons Board of Directors. And on behalf of the board, it's my honor to welcome you all to the 2021 501 Commons Appreciation Awards event. Thank you very much for joining today. At 501 Commons, we believe that we will rise when all nonprofits thrive. 501 Commons serves nonprofits as experts, innovators, and partners. Our passion is to amplify the strengths of nonprofits so people and communities flourish. 501 Commons could not deliver on this vital mission without you, the Executive Service Corps. In 2020 alone, Service Corps members contributed 1.5 million in in-kind services. Every year, your skill, dedication, and passion for nonprofit capacity building impacts the quality of life for tens of thousands of people and families throughout Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and beyond. Today, we celebrate your service to our communities. We will also honor Service Corps members who have distinguished themselves through exemplary performance in 2020 and 2021. Before we get started with today's awards, Camille, our Community Engagement Manager, will introduce the 501 Commons staff and volunteer leaders that are joining us today.
Thank you, Richard. So today, I'm delighted to introduce you to the volunteer leaders and that help guide 501 Commons, including our 501 Commons board members, as well as our Executive Service Corps Leadership Council. Board members, as I say your name, please raise your hand in the chat or wave. Today in attendance, we have, of course, Richard Starnes. We have Casa Tupua Pearson. We have, so I'm just double checking because I don't want to say someone's name who is not here. We have Sally Anderson joining us. We have, let's see, Kathleen Simpson, as well as Chris McClincy and Chris Miller. And I believe those are, let's double check because I don't want to miss anyone. Those are all of our board members in attendance today. Thank you, board members, for attending, as well as, thank you for the guidance that you provide 501 Commons through your service. It's also my pleasure to welcome members of our Executive Service Corps Leadership Council. Council is a volunteer advisory group that collaborates with staff to support Service Corps members and to identify new ways members can serve our community. Council members, as I say your name, please raise your hand in the chat or wave. Let's see, today we have Linda Mangoni, we have Peg Hunt, we have Ann Suter joining us, and double check and make sure I'm not missing anyone. Yes, that is all for the Executive Service Corps Leadership Council. Thank you, council members, for your work with 501 Commons. Next, I'd like to introduce the 501 Commons staff that are present. Again, please raise your hand in the chat or wave as I say your name. I see we have Deputy Director Evan Bennett. We have Management Consulting Program Manager Jen Burrell. We have, let's see, Finance Program Manager Susan Davis. Let's see, am I missing anyone else? Let's double check. And of course, Executive Director Nancy Long. And thank you all to all of you for what you do for the nonprofits and the individuals we serve. I'm now happy to introduce Deputy Director Evan Bennett, who is going to reflect with us for 2020 and 2021.
Well, thank you, Camille, and thank you everybody for being here today. It's my absolute pleasure to have worked with many of you in different capacities, especially over the last 2 years. And they have been a time of immense disruption and change for nonprofits and communities that we serve. And I know that you all have felt that yourselves. We have been awed by the grace and skill of nonprofits as they serve our communities during this time of the greatest crises in our nation's history. It is thanks to the leadership, determination, and the flexibility of the 501 Commons team, including its volunteers, that we have been able to grow and pivot during difficult times. Whatever challenges our communities have faced, we know that with your help, we will continue to be able to be here to step up to these challenges. Since the pandemic started, 501 Commons has helped thousands of nonprofits navigate the challenges of the virus. We have provided guidance on supporting staff and leveraging technology to modify operations and programs. We have also brought revenue to nonprofits by helping them apply for $3 million in forgivable loans through the Paycheck Protection Program, affectionately coined the PPP. And Give Big has generated $19.2 million in 2020 and $17.4 million in 2021. In 2021, we launched the Exec to Exec program in partnership with Dan Bridge and John Fine and other Service Corps members to provide free executive advising to nonprofit leaders who find themselves facing new issues every single day. The broad range of services, training, and expertise we bring through the efforts of our Service Corps members and staff gives nonprofit leaders the knowledge and skills they need to run healthy and effective organizations. Each year, we reach more nonprofits. In 2020 and 2021, we provided services to just over 2,000 nonprofits. Our geographic area reach has also increased. In 2020, we served 73% of Washington's counties and 17 other states, including Washington, D.C. Our staff members and Service Corps members, their expertise to 501 Commons clients from across the country. We have also been able to deepen our engagement with clients. 42% of our engagements with clients with us through multiple channels on average, 95% say they would work with 501 Commons again. The long-term relationships we build with our partners create much needed stability in an ever-changing world. We are pleased to boost the capacity of small and large nonprofits alike and could not do so without the Service Corps members contributing more than $1 million in time each year. Thank you to each and every one of you for all you do to amplify the strengths of nonprofits so all people and communities flourish. We look forward to continuing to work with you in 2022. I would now like to introduce 501 Commons board member Kathleen Simpson. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Evan. First, I would like to acknowledge past honorees in the audience. All prior award recipients, including those that are now staff members, please raise your hand and wave. Thank you for your continued dedication to 501 Commons and the nonprofit sector. I would also like to thank our donors, the majority of which are Service Corps members. As a nonprofit organization, 501 Commons depends on contributions from foundations, corporations, and individuals to underwrite the Executive Service Corps and our other critical services. The fees we earn do not fully cover our cost, so it is thanks to our donors that we can deliver on our mission to amplify the strengths of nonprofits. Donations are essential to our ability to help people, families, and communities. It is for that reason I want to take a moment to thank the Service Corps members, 501 Commons staff, and other supporters that donate to 501 Commons. Our sincere thanks for your investment in building a better world. My fellow board member, Chris McClincy, will now begin the awards ceremony. Chris?
Thank you, Kathleen, and it's a real privilege to be here, and it's great to see everybody on Zoom, so it's good to see faces and see some names and faces that I've heard but not seen before. Today, we honor volunteers who have gone above and beyond, individuals who model the values that guide our work, respect, integrity, and partnership, individuals who provide the structure needed for organizations ultimately to end up where they want and need to go. Our honoree for the New Member Award certainly demonstrates all of these values. The New Member Award recognizes a consultant that joined the Executive Service Corps within the last 2 years and has demonstrated excellence and excellent service in the completion of at least one assignment. This year's New Member Award goes to Tammy Munson. Tammy has provided excellent service on 2 strategic planning projects in her first year of volunteering and is currently working on her 3rd assignment with 501 Commons. Tammy took the lead on developing beautifully outlined presentations for both organizations that helped bring stakeholders along in the planning process and outlined the organization's process, goals, and strategies. These presentations served as great communication tools and will serve as great documentation for future reference. The West Seattle Time Bank builds connections between members and member organizations as they exchange services, skills, talents, and time. The board shared these words about Tammy's work with them. The West Seattle Time Bank is very grateful for the opportunity to work with Tammy Munson to develop a strategic plan for our organization. We were conflicted with how to move our organization forward and needed professional assistance to develop a strategic plan. And with Tammy's guidance, we learned components of a strategic plan to improve and deepen our relationships with our community partners, learned how the agency's mission, vision, priorities, and objectives fit into a strategic plan, how a planning team is built, and how to implement the strategic plan and evaluate success. Tammy facilitated 3 two-hour virtual sessions to develop our plan. These sessions required extensive work by Tammy before each one to provide us with the materials beforehand and homework assignments after each session. These exercises revealed many obstacles we had to resolve before we could develop strategic plan goals and an action plan. We appreciated Tammy's professional experience, facilitating each session with a great sense of humor and patience. We also appreciated that she took the time to understand our organization's mission and culture and evaluated the feedback we had gathered from our members before our work with her, and then incorporated them into our overall plan. Tammy has provided us with a tool we use at every board meeting to stay on track with our goals for our organization. Thank you, Tammy. We feel very fortunate to have worked with you and hope you'll join us at one of our board meetings to see how great your plan is working for us. Tammy, congratulations, and we would like to invite you to share some remarks.
Thank you so much, Chris. That description sounds a lot more exciting than I remember. But I did want to just provide some color on what this has meant to me to be part of this organization. Until this last May, I've been pretty much a career consultant, which is why I have lots of PowerPoint decks to share with people. And I've recently moved into industry, into biotech. And so being able to continue to exercise my consulting skills has been really exciting for me and really important. I've also really enjoyed the chance to work with others. I worked with Carl on my first assignment with the Chinatown International Business District. And I worked with Margie on this West Seattle Time Bank. And I've had a chance to learn a lot of interesting things like how time banks work. And I highly recommend them, as well as just more about how business improvement districts work and just how the city of Seattle works with them. And finally, I had a chance to test out my Zoom capabilities when we went to remote learning before I had to do it at work. So it was really helpful. So thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great being part of your organization.
Well, thank you and congratulations, Tammy. And we hope you volunteer with 501 Commons for many years to come. Next, Peg Hunt, the chair of the Executive Services Core Leadership Council, will present the team award. Peg?
Somehow I knew I was going to do that. Turn my mute off. First of all, I want to congratulate Tammy. Tammy and I go way back. In our first, I think our first work as consultants, and then our paths crossed again when she and my brother-in-law Ray worked together, I think at Anderson. Mm-hmm. So it's really exciting for our paths to cross again, and I'm really glad that you're volunteering with 501 Commons. Thanks,
Peg.
I have the honor of presenting the team award. It's presented in recognition of a consulting team that has demonstrated excellence in performing its duties, guiding a client to the successful completion of an assignment. This year's team award goes to Kathleen Pierce and David Cordell for their work with the Nisei Veterans Community Foundation and the Somali Health Board. David and Kathleen have worked well together on these two dynamic projects, serving community-based organizations in the past year. David's experience working within cultural communities and leading projects with flexibility and grace has been a good match for Kathleen's board and organizational development expertise. Both demonstrate a self-awareness, sensitivity, and respect that make them particularly well-suited to working within non-dominant cultural communities. Their ability to tag team both navigating and managing projects is impressive. Before Kathleen and David share their remarks, we have a message from the board of the Nisei Veterans Community Foundation. While we're waiting for that, I've had the opportunity to work with Kathleen on a project as well, and I enjoyed it and learned a lot from her. She contributes greatly besides being a previous board member of 501 Commons. So I'm very happy to be part of awarding this to you, Kathleen.
Folks, was everyone able to hear the sound initially when I clicked play?
I was not able to hear any sound.
Okay, let me just stop the share and reshare it. And I think I'll be able to fix that. Let me double check.
I'm not getting the sound, can you?
Let me see if I can figure that out. My apologies, y'all. Okay, share sound. Let's try this again from the beginning.
Organize ourselves. Ah, there you go.
All right, try that fresh.
Hi, 501. I'm David Fukuhara, President. We are the NVC Foundation, a small nonprofit dedicated to honoring the legacy of the Japanese American veterans in Washington State. Since World War II, our veterans have forged a glorious legacy that we sustain through education and community programs. Yet, our 17-member board has struggled to organize ourselves and manage our assets. So we turn to 501 Commons. We are grateful that you sent Kathleen, Pearson, and David Cordell to work with us. And as a result, they are deserving of the 501 Commons Team Award. Next, Bev Cascino, board member.
We have pretty much operated using tribal knowledge and quasi-Robert's Rules of Order to run our meetings. We were looking to the 501 Commons to help with structure and organization. Kathleen and David administered a survey to gather feedback on the pulse of our board and facilitated 2 training sessions. The end result was a thorough 16-page report with recommendations, including many suggested templates such as operating policies, executive and member responsibilities, and best practices. Sean Brinsfield.
Thank you, Bev. Kathleen and David diagnosed our organization and with training sessions instilled in us the vision of a healthy nonprofit, inspiring the board through uncomfortable but necessary face-to-face dialogue, for which I am confident will continue to produce significant positive changes in how we govern and manage. We are freeing the president to govern more and administer less. Greg Imane, board member, please.
Kathleen and David gave great input while assessing the climate of the meetings. They made a good team and they inspired a strong sense of trust with their credentialed seasoned expertise. We really appreciated their patience and dynamic active listening. They are very positive, professional, and invested in our success, and they exceeded our expectations concerning their availability. The NVC Foundation was lucky to have had Kathleen and David as our consultants, and we enjoyed working with them.
So, congratulations.
Kathleen and David.
On your nomination.
For the 501 Commons Team Award.
Yay!
Hey.
My apologies, y'all, that I couldn't increase the sound on that. If I click anything, it stops the the recording. So I will now increase my sound so that will be louder in the future. Since
So now we will hear from Kathleen and then David.
Well, thank you for that touching tribute. That was so great. It was great to see all their faces again and to, hear those kind words. And I just want to thank you, Peg, too, because you were my first consulting partner, you recall. And I still follow your many tips and wise advice. So thank you. So I just want to say a few words about the value of teams. And I know you all get this, believe in it, but teams clearly do boost quality because they bring diverse skills, diverse approaches, and probably most important, diverse personalities to the client. They also provide opportunities for new consultants to learn the ropes. But when meeting the needs of culturally diverse leaders, which these two assignments David and I did together represented, and also when meeting virtually because of geography or the pandemic, I think teams are absolutely essential. Together, David and I were able, I gather, to navigate some tough cultural barriers. And with our Somali and Nisei clients, including things like an aversion to written expectations, generational tensions within the organization. But we also were able to capitalize on some really strong cultural strengths, like strong personal relationships and listening well to others so that people could get where they needed to go. So I really hope that 501 Commons will soon be able to provide more consultants of color. But in the meantime, I am so grateful for having a well-matched partner who had significant learned experience, if not lived experience, with the cultures we worked with. I also want to say something about engaging virtually. I'm sure you've all encountered this. I just couldn't have done this without David's patient support and common sense. And, trying to work with Google Docs and breakout rooms, I mean, this is just not common knowledge. And it was tough. So teams really mattered. So thank you, David, for your wisdom and for your stamina. And thank you, 501 Commons, for trusting us and honoring us today.
Thanks, Kathleen. I think it's my turn to say a few remarks. So can everybody hear me? Just not, I see nods of heads, so that's good. Yeah. Yes, we're all learning how to use and Zoom, and I reflect back on Kathleen's thank me for my patience, but she was the one that really had the fortitude and working with Zoom and trying to figure it out and having practice sessions the couple of days before we would meet with our group. So just in terms of remarks, it was remarkable to see that thank you video. What a nice effort on the part of the Nisei group. I was really struck by both organizations' success in working with their particular communities. Both the Somali group and the Nisei group had remarkable success. And so coming in and trying to offer them something in terms of organization and information that 501 Commons had to offer was an honor, and also reminded me how important it is to be aware of the cultural backgrounds of the organizations and people that we're working with. And that doesn't mean that you know everything. Hopefully it means that you can enter with respect and set the stage for open communication. But beyond that, you really have to hold your assumptions in suspense and be aware that you're assuming all kinds of things, even things about the culture that you've read or experienced. And then you learn that that individual's particular personality or something doesn't fit the culture that they're from. And so something else happens. One thing in particular that occurred during our work with the Nisei group was that one of the members really was frustrated at one point and asked Kathleen and I if we'd made any effort to localize, meaning to culturally adjust the information in best practices on board development that we were presenting. And we were a little bit taken aback because I don't think we had thought about localizing, trying to make the best practices information fit a particular culture or that kind of thing. And so it was just something to think about. And the fact that this person could present that to us in the middle of the session, I thought was great, even though it kind of threw us for a loop for a minute, but it was just another lesson learned. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you both for sharing your remarks and congratulations again. Chris Miller, our board treasurer, will now present the Legacy Award.
Thank you, Peg. I'm honored to present the Legacy Award today. The Legacy Award honors a volunteer that has created an exemplary project, report, or product that is used by our clients and that is valuable as a model for other 501 Commons consultants and clients. Today, we honor Mike Harbour with a Legacy Award for his work on the Prepare, Respond, Serve program and for his service with Aurora Commons. Before starting his first assignment with 501 Commons, Mike reviewed the Prepare, Respond, Serve guide and developed a list of questions to help get the conversation started with the client. He didn't just share the list of questions, but used it to capture information, get to know the client better, to know where the client was coming from, and inspire trust with the client. Through this process, Mike was able to demonstrate the program's value and develop buy-in on the final product so that the client was ready to contribute where needed. The tool has served as a helpful resource for subsequent engagements and is a great example of meeting clients where they are and leading projects through successful completion. Aurora Commons is a welcoming space for unhoused neighbors to rest, prepare a meal, connect to resources, and collectively create a healthy and vibrant community. They seek to be a space for authenticity and conversation, to bring the wider community to the table, to learn from one another, to be transformed by one another, and to embrace one another. Sarah Ewalt, the operations manager at Aurora Commons, had this to say about Mike. We are so grateful for the time Mike Harbour spent with us to form a strategic emergency plan for our organization, Aurora Commons. Under his direction, he helped us walk through different scenarios and what steps we could take as an organization to ensure that we were able to function for our clients and community that we work with. Mike took time to understand our organization's ethos and mission so that an emergency plan would help keep that mission in focus while responding to whatever situation was being addressed. He also made sure the response steps seemed manageable, even to a small organization. Having an adaptable plan helps us as an organization feel more comfortable should small or extreme emergencies arise. Thank you so much, Mike. We're thankful to have your direction and support and count you as a part of our Commons community. We hope you'll keep in touch. Mike, would you like to share some remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And I have really appreciated being involved in 501 Commons. It's I've been privileged to work now with 3 different amazing organizations, Aurora Commons being one of them, and also with 3 great partners in the project. And I feel a little strange being here without my partner on this project that we worked on. So one of the things I've really appreciated working with 501 Commons is I've learned something from every project. With this particular project, I was very fortunate to have Mark Davidson as my partner on this project. And as we went into this project, I'm an engineer, I'm very task oriented and kind of had that approach. And Mark is much more relationship person. And he really kind of taught me you need to develop the relationship before you can get the work done. And so that's something I've tried to carry forward from that project. So I was asked to give advice along the way. So here's my first piece of advice was at the beginning of your project, go slow. Take the time to really learn the project and develop those relationships. And that really pays off as you get into your project. My second bit of advice that worked with this project is to keep things simple. And it was kind of, Mark and I were faced with a project with Aurora Commons, and we had this guidebook, which was good, but it was just really overly complicated for what we wanted to do. So we were able to break it down into that series of questions, work through them with the organization, and really, I think at the end, come up with a good plan. My final piece of advice I'll give is that it's also always important to remember what your role as a consultant is or as a facilitator in these projects. With Aurora Commons and the other projects I've worked on, it's been important to recognize that they need to make the decisions. They need to live with the final plan. They need to own that final plan. So just keeping that in mind, not forcing my opinion or our opinion on the organizations has been really valuable as we're going on. It's all about listening, and that's what it's all about asking questions, listening some more, asking questions, and then making sure that the organization does own that plan. Finally, I want to thank 501 Commons. I've had great fun working on these projects. They've been great at working with wonderful people. I've been lucky to work with 3 amazing organizations so far: Aurora Commons, Hope Sparks down in Pierce County, and Sound Childcare Solutions. And they're all 3 incredibly different organizations that are great to work with. I've also had 3 great partners. Mark Davidson on the first project, Sean A.B. On a project after that, and currently working with one of today's honorees, David Cordell, on a strategic planning project. So that's been great. So again, thank you 501 Commons. Thanks Jan Burrell for doing a great job, I think, of creating teams that work well together, and thank all of you.
Well, thank you, Mike. We're certainly grateful for your exemplary service and your contribution to 501 Commons and our clients. I'd now like to reintroduce Evan Bennett, 501 Commons Deputy Director, to present the next award.
Great, thank you, Chris. The Willie Austin Award recognizes support for the development of a new or emerging organization, client satisfaction, and service that was effectively used by a spirited nonprofit. I am very pleased to present this year's Willie Austin Award to Dell Gaynor for his work on 501 Commons Paycheck Protection Program. And that provided consulting and training, which helped over 160 organizations and resulted in over $2.7 million in approved loans. There are really no words to describe how valuable a resource Dell was in the 501 Commons team in relation to the Paycheck Protection Program loan assistance. As anyone who worked on the loans can attest, the information and guidance changed sometimes on an hourly basis. Dell was on call to work through all the latest information we received. He was such an excellent thought partner for us. Given his long experience in accounting and reading government regulations, we absolutely could not have done this work without him. Ultimately, Dell helped 501 Commons deliver materials and webinars to hundreds of people throughout the Pacific Northwest region and was an on-call resource for both our internal team as well as several clients. It's safe to say that Dell's knowledge and generosity boosted the capacity of hundreds of nonprofits in the Pacific Northwest. Our sincere thanks to Dell. Dell, would you like to share any of your remarks with us?
Need to unmute myself. There we go. Thank you, Evan. Just going to answer three different questions. What do I value about the opportunity to work with 501 Commons? First, I want to thanks to Nancy for allowing me to be part of 501 educational endeavors focused on internal controls starting in 2005. You were kind enough to engage with one who has been involved with nonprofits from the practice side, also one who's been involved with the educational nonprofit leaders. Additionally, I want to say thank you to all the internal staff of 501 Commons with whom I've been able to work, advise, and mentor. And to you, Evan, thanks for continue to believe in my abilities. After a brief time of service to 501 Commons, I had to take a leave from 501 Commons because I got very involved in providing pay for professional consulting service for a larger growing nonprofit in the Auburn area for 6 years. In addition, I had several other pro bono assignments apart from 501 Commons. However, a few years ago, Nancy and Evan were kind enough to ask me to assist in the consulting and education processes again. So what have I learned from 501 Commons' latest assignment? In addition to consulting via 501 Commons with a local nonprofit startup, which had great visions before COVID hit and then nothing happened, my initial unassigned assignment was to regard the PPP loan process and accountability. I had a client in California who was one of the first to consider applying for a PPP loan. I learned all that I could about the law and its application well before its final enactment and any guidance that was issued. It was a shot in the dark, but between Evan and I, we were able to create formats that were very useful and spreadsheets that provided documentation, tracking, progress markers for the use and progress markers for the use of the loan funds. It was fun to create new tools that had broad usage. Finally, what's my advice for other assignments and coaches? Your assignments are extremely valuable to nonprofits. Unfortunately, executive leadership and board members within nonprofits have a tendency to focus on their mission and forget they have accounting and other operational needs and issues that must be met. It's not always popular to be the voice to call leadership to be accountable. However, accountability and financial stability of the nonprofits are as equally important as their focus on their mission. Whatever you can do to positively move forward those administrative and operational objectives through education and service, you're moving the nonprofit in the right direction. Secondly, don't look for accolades for your service. You only gain when you give yourself away unselfishly to others. The title of a book written by Bob Buford says it best when we reach the halfway mark of our lives. The title is Halftime, Going from Success to Significance. I carry with me these days a disease called cancer. I've been battling it for nearly a year. As I review my life, it's times where I have given myself away, focused on significance versus success, that have been the most memorable and gratifying. I only have a couple of other thank yous and I'm finished. First, to my wife, who has supported me for over the past 50 years as I give myself to many worthy endeavors, which have taken time away from my being with her. And lastly, thank you for the award and recognition. It's been an honor to serve 501 Commons, and I'm deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Next, I'd like to pass it on to board member Kasatupua Pearson, who will present our final award for today.
Thank you, Evan, and congratulations again, Dell, and all of the previous award winners. We've saved the most prestigious of our honors for last. The John Pearson Award is presented in recognition of contributions of time and talent devoted to multiple projects and a willingness to go beyond expectations. The award is given to a person who demonstrates the behaviors that build trust with the organizations we serve. So as you can see on the screen, there are 10 criteria for choosing the person that receives this award. And before we hear about our award winner, I want to introduce the person who is the namesake for this award. John Pearson, I believe he's with us today. If he can wave, but John has volunteered hundreds of hours in service to Washington community since 1988. His commendable communitarianism and leadership inspired the creation of this award. So thank you so much, John. So this year's John Pearson Award winner is Peter Berliner. So I am just really, really honored and so excited that I get to present this award to Peter. Peter, he and Kathleen, they both served on 501 Commons board several years ago, and it was such a pleasure to get to serve with them and learn from them. So Peter, this is just so awesome that I get to do this. Peter is a trusted advisor for clients, fellow volunteer consultants, and 501 Commons program managers. His professionalism, insight, and breadth of expertise inspire trust. He does a great job navigating project ambiguity and helping to align client needs with desires. He recognizes strengths, rolls with challenges, and is graceful about framing opportunities. We're so grateful for Peter's service on 21 different projects since joining the Service Corps in 2016 and 9 projects in the last 2 years. Clients consistently give Peter the highest marks for his work. Hannah Palin, a board member of Moving Image Preservation of Puget Sound, or My Pops, had this to say of Peter. Okay, so Peter was such a pleasure to work with. He provided us with incredibly useful information to help us build our board. Peter was a wonderful partner who provided us with guidance, a steady hand, and great insight into how to move our organization forward. We truly appreciate his work with us on this project. So before you get to share your remarks, we have another message from the co-executive director of My Pops, Rachel Price.
Hello, my name is Rachel Price, and I'm the co-executive director of Moving Image Preservation of Puget Sound. Me Pops helps organizations like libraries, archives, museums, and cultural organizations preserve and digitize and make accessible their moving image materials. And we met Peter when we decided we needed to beef up our board. And Peter, along with Lori Weiss, were extremely helpful. Peter asked some wonderful clarifying questions. People always get a tad confused about what we do. So he asked us clarifying questions about what we do. And based on that, he also asked more questions for things for us to consider in expanding our board. And he was very honest and good listener and funny. And as a result, we do have one new board recruit, someone who'd been in the back of our minds for that. And this person eagerly agreed. And we look forward to applying our new knowledge for more board recruits. And congratulations, Peter, and thank you.
Congratulations, Peter. Would you like to share your remarks?
Sure, thank you, Casa, so much. And it's nice to hear your voice, and also just nice to see everyone and realize that we've been kind of isolated. So I'm really looking forward to next year's convening of this event. It's a little overwhelming too, but let me just say, I love 501 Commons. And I've been working with 501 Commons for so many years in different roles, probably starting when I was a nonprofit executive, and then when I was a funder, and then as a board member on 501 Commons board for several years, and now as a volunteer consultant. And of all those, let me tell you, being a volunteer consultant is the most fun. I've really enjoyed it. I hadn't realized it had gotten over to 20 engagements, but each and every one of them has been a journey and has been really interesting and has enriched my life and hopefully some of the people that I worked with. But I want to say what makes it so much fun is really the work of the 501 Commons staff. They are so effective in supporting our work and creating a structure for our consultation, in really coming to clear agreements with the client so that we have a chance to be efficient and effective. And most importantly, they just really make it painless for us. And so I'm always happy whenever I can to say yes to whatever they're requesting. And particularly I appreciate Jan Burrell simply because I work with her the most, but all of her other colleagues and Nancy's leadership as well. I find it so rewarding because I just have such great appreciation for the people who are working in the nonprofit field. And as somebody who's been retired for several years now, I have great appreciation for anybody who works at all, even if they're just going to the next room to turn on Zoom. But I particularly appreciate the people who are leading nonprofits, who are working as staff, for the boards who are contributing their time, often for very little recognition, but I try to make them all know that I recognize the importance of the work they do and how effectively they're doing it. And so I'm completely inspired by their work. in terms of what keeps me going or what might keep other consultants going, I suggest just when you really take this opportunity in hand and embrace the mission of the organizations to which you're assigned. Be encouraging and enthusiastic. I've had the chance to work with such a variety of groups, from senior housing to mental health services to a group designing pollution-free cook stoves for families in Africa, to heritage presentations such as the work that MePops does. And it's all very interesting and enlightening, and has really broadened the scope of my knowledge. And I just feel grateful for playing a small role in helping them achieve their mission. And by doing that, serving the community. And again, particularly when we're busy with other types of work, or if we're retired as I am, just to have that opportunity to stay engaged and make a contribution is such a joy. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. So with that, I'd like to again thank CASA, thank the board and staff of 501 Commons for this kind of recognition, which is wonderful, but mostly just for the opportunity to serve. So thank you all.
Thank you, Peter, and congratulations again. Now we're going to hear from Nancy Long, Executive Director, for her words. And after Nancy speaks, she's going to take some questions, or there will be a Q&A. So, Nancy.
Thank you, Casa. You know, we spent so much time looking at the scene that we're all looking at now of people in boxes on a screen. And I prefer to try to convert that in my mind to the idea of a tapestry. And when I hear these stories, and each of you, either as presenters or award winners, have talked a bit about your relationship with 501 Commons, I think about this amazing tapestry that we create together, and the way that that tapestry holds our community. So I want to talk because we really consider Service Corps members to be part of our 501 Commons family, and essential to our future. I want to talk a little bit about what we see on the horizon for 501 Commons. For today, I'd like for us to think about being gathered together to create a play that I'm going to call the 501 Commons 2022. My role is to set the stage, provide some lead characters, and kind of share some major plot lines. And then I would welcome you to cast yourself as a part in this play for the coming year. The background of our play is a stage set with change and with challenge. The dark clouds of the pandemic are lingering over our stage and influencing every aspect of our work and our lives. And on the surface, it sort of appears that work goes on relatively undisturbed. In fact, most of our staff, and perhaps you as volunteers, have found providing services remotely to be very efficient and sometimes quite pleasant. But those dark clouds are casting a pall over all of our lives. For many people, it's causing significant and persistent psychological stress, making it hard for them to leave, or making it hard for them to work and to relate to others. And some people are having difficulty leaving personal issues at the door, especially when the door to work and the door to home is the same door. In fact, it's not only the pandemic that is a feature in the setting for our play, but COVID is a leading actor. It impacts all the organizations we serve. And this is the case if they're adjusting to dramatic increases in those services that they're providing and the demand for their services, or if they're attempting to sustain just elements of their mission in these little squares on a screen. The impact of that villain, COVID, is that it reduces buoyancy. Have you heard this term? It's applied these days to the challenges they're facing teachers. It's a term that's been around for a while, but I think it's perfect for these times. Buoyancy is an individual's ability to successfully deal with setbacks and challenges typical to everyday life, essentially our everyday resilience. And the key to maintaining emotional buoyancy is giving and receiving support and empathy. And what could apply better to the work that we do and the way that we do our work than the idea of giving and receiving support and empathy? Many of you have spoken to that as being an element of the way that you do consulting, and many of you have spoken to the way in which you received support and personal gratification from the work that you do. This idea of buoyancy echoes the gratitude research that's been done over the last many years by Stanford University. And that research has found that people who reflect on what they have to be grateful for are happier and healthier. Gratitude reframes how we see the world. It improves our sleep, reduces stress hormones, allows us to be creative, and it in fact allows us to spot positive aspects and opportunities in the world around us. And I think that's one of the reasons why all of you are so successful in doing this work, and why we hear the kinds of messages we've heard from clients today, is you're able to spot the positive. You're able to help people reframe the way they see their world. And that brings great benefits to them individually and to organizations. We know the practice of gratitude isn't easy because we're all hardwired by evolution to look for threats and to focus on the negative. And during these times, that is a tempting way to live our lives. But our mission is to amplify the strengths of nonprofits so all people and communities can flourish. So finding ways to bring that buoyancy into the lives of the people we work with is critical. In the past, we have really focused on building capacity in a way that brings management practices and capabilities into organizations. And we'll continue to do that work. We'll continue to make sure the numbers are in the right boxes, and we'll secure networks, and we'll check compliance actions, and we'll build the data fields and so forth. But now I think we also have to think a lot about how we do that work. How do we help people get their mojo back? How do we build buoyancy into our own teams, with our volunteers, and with the organizations that we serve? One important project that we've been working on during the last year is putting people first. This work aims to improve nonprofit wages and benefits and to build more satisfying workplaces for nonprofit employees. And so here's the backstory. This work originated in a discussion with a senior leader in King County government more than 4 years ago. The county noticed that the turnover of direct service staff was resulting in big drops in the impact of the services that the county was supporting. So just when outreach workers or social workers or program staff were getting traction and helping people improve their lives, they'd leave their jobs, for burnout or just the need to have a better wage, or a variety of reasons that were sort of causing that constant turnover in nonprofits. And the client's gains would be lost when they lost that connection with an effective staff member. So we suggested to the county that this situation was not going to change until we improved pay and benefits in the nonprofit sector and helped nonprofits do a better job of creating inclusive workplaces that were giving people a sense of belonging and a sense of personal opportunity and a place where they could build a career. We explained that nonprofits needed assistance if they were going to build that kind of workplace culture, and that organizations needed to be able to really put their people first, which is something that's been very difficult to do in the culture of nonprofits. Even 4 years ago, it was clear that the sector built around unending self-sacrifice was not going to be resilient. The result of that conversation, or as a result of that conversation, we're about to release the King County Nonprofit Wage and Benefits Survey and the Employee Engagement Survey. This work is looking for specific ways we can improve nonprofit sector compensation and workplace culture. And this will be a major theme of our work in 501 Commons 2022. Notably, much of the work on these reports has been done by Service Corps members. Especially, I want to recognize Linda Mangoni and Peg Hunt, who are with us today, but also Sean Abe and Linda Gaynor, who've worked on these projects. Over the next year, we'll be helping nonprofits use the results of the reports to draw attention to common pay inequities in our sector, to help organizations talk to funders about the need to improve pay and benefits, and to promulgate methods for building emotional buoyancy into organizational cultures. There will be major parts and some walk-on roles for Service Corps members as we do this work. Related to putting people first is the support we need to provide to nonprofit leaders. As I talk to nonprofit directors, their workloads have easily doubled. Not only is the management of staff unendingly challenging given the tsunami turnover, or the turnover tsunami that we're currently in, but they have to rethink an array of foundational decisions and practices on a regular basis, constantly scanning their environment, making decisions over and over again to recognize the changing situation that we find ourselves in. As Evan mentioned, Service Corps members John Fine and Dan Bridge recognized this problem from the interactions they had with nonprofit leaders, and they brought us the idea of matching executive directors with former EDs and CEOs as executive advisors. We had offered this service along with coaching for many years, but the twist here is that we wanted to make the service free and we wanted to offer it in the context of the pandemic. The problem we needed to solve was we have such severe constraints on staff time and the organization that we couldn't figure out how to staff this work. So John offered to recruit volunteers and raise money, and Dan offered to do the project management, matching volunteers to requests from organizations. And some of you may have worked with Dan as he did this amazing volunteer work over the last year. Another storyline I want to share with you is the recent launch of a new program called Next Level, which is for community-based organizations. For this work, we're focusing on 4 organizations that primarily serve the Black community. Our new Director of Management Consulting and Services, Sam Hampton, leads this program with Tyree Maley's support. And Service Corps members are stepping in to act as mentors, and also will be doing capacity building projects identified as the organizations develop their work plans. And as this program expands, we're prioritizing recruiting Service Corps members of color and people who have deep experience working in communities of color. As Kathleen mentioned, that's been a priority for our organization, and we believe this work makes it an even greater priority. I had a chance to meet the 4 participating leaders about a week ago, and they are amazing. So consider if you or someone you know excuse me, can serve and support these leaders in our Next Level program. So let's take stock of our themes and our cast. Beyond the pandemic, our themes are focused work that advances racial equity, diversity and inclusion, and accessibility, the opportunity to address longstanding challenges in the nonprofit business model so that the sector can attract and retain talented employees, and the need to find creative ways to meet the needs of nonprofits without burning out our staff. As the antagonist in our story here, we have COVID disrupting, adding chaos, creating challenges every day. And as the protagonist, we have you. We have Service Corps member generosity, and we have the dedication of our staff. In addition to all the projects with nonprofits like those you've heard about today, recently Service Corps members have stepped into roles other than doing services with nonprofits and have taken on internal roles and projects. As I mentioned, Peg and Linda's work on the Putting People First research that we've done are examples. Other examples are that 3 years ago, Marianne Tomas, who was a highly effective Plan IT program volunteer, stepped in as an interim manager for IT and then took on the role for 3 years. Marianne's going to be leaving us soon, but Kai Daly, who was also a Plan IT volunteer, is joining as the new interim manager. And while when Evan was promoted to deputy director, he needed someone to step into the role of program manager, and longtime volunteer Katie Koch did so for 4 months, working from her home in San Francisco. And she just handed the reins off to the new program manager, Susan Davis, who's with us today. So think about what role you're interested in taking in 501 Commons 2022. How can we provide you with another opportunity, or maybe your first opportunity, to give and receive the empathy and support we all need to retain our own buoyancy, and to give the support that nonprofits need to find buoyancy in their own lives? William Defoe said, "Great theater is about challenging how we think and encouraging us to fantasize about a world we aspire to." Challenging how we all think and encouraging us to fantasize about a world we aspire to. Let's do that. Let's challenge how we think, and let's fantasize about the world we aspire to. Thank you all for your support of 501 Commons, for your dedication to the community we serve, for your kindness to our staff, and we appreciate you being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. We're now going to move into our Q&A. When this time, it's a great time to start with questions, both for Nancy as well as other staff that are on the call. Of course, anything that we can't answer in the moment, I can follow up with folks. I also have a question myself if folks aren't ready with questions, which is, I guess, maybe just to kick us off. Nancy, you talk about challenging the way that we think. And I'm curious if you have any techniques or way of making sure that you're continuing to challenge yourself to think differently.
Yeah, good question, Camille. So we just had a lesson around this week, I think, because what I've always found with 501 Commons is 501 Commons has this kind of magical way that opportunities appear to us, and if we can, see what that opportunity holds and kind of figure out how it relates to our purpose, we can often grab kind of the next development of our organization. And Camille, you know this from the story around Give Big, where initially we sort of went, no, that's not what we do. and kind of said, oh, we'll be here to support whoever wants to take on this role. But when nobody else did, we stepped forward. And now I just can't imagine like not having Give Big. It's and Washington Gives, which was the next iteration of Give Big. It's so core to what we do. What could be more basic to capacity building than helping organizations learn how to fundraise? Because really fundraising is about relationships. And so what we're really helping organizations do is expanding their relationships in the world. And that's fundamental to any kind of capacity building. So that's one example. There are a whole bunch of grant opportunities right now that we're looking at. And we had one that really didn't look like it fit. Matter of fact, we sort of asked a question and the answer we got back from the state was, it doesn't fit. But we figured out a way that if it comes to fruition, could be a really wonderful next evolution of 501 Commons, which is how could we take the role of providing a platform and the kind of the infrastructure support to allow very small community-based activists, sometimes not even organizations, but people, and sometimes small organizations access these large state or federal grants. How could we build a platform that others could use so that they could do the work that they do in community more effectively? And we have a proposal that we're working on with folks in Yakima Valley that would help people in the Valley get access to state benefits and federal programs that they are eligible for, but they don't know about. They find huge barriers in technology and language and other issues that make it hard for them to access those barriers. So that's the practice that I would call to. It's like constantly being open to the idea that what is presented to us, even on the face of it, from a sort of, if we looked at it from a purely, does this fit what we do, or is this part of our business model standpoint, we would reject it. But actually, if we look hard at it, look at it as that opportunity, if we take a positive view on it, rather than looking at it as, oh, well, this would just be more work, or we're probably not going to get the grant anyway, or who has time to write 4 grants in 3 weeks, So if we looked at it from a capacity standpoint internally, we might miss the opportunity. And so staying open to that has been critical to the development of the organization throughout our more than 30 years.
Thank you, Nancy. And I'll repeat what I said in chat. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. If you would prefer to raise your hand and I'll call on you. If you don't want to interrupt anyone, that's fine too, or leave them in the chat.
But we're small enough that if you want to just speak up, that will work too.
That's true. I see Patricia raise her hand.
Yeah, thanks. Nancy, can you share with me, because I'm relatively new to the organization, and so many of the nonprofits I'm working with now are looking at shared leadership models and community-centered fundraising, community-centered leadership. What resources does 501 Commons have, and how are some of the policies and materials that exist being updated to reflect those type of models?
It's a great question, Patricia. We're reviewing the final wage and benefit study with the county right now, and in fact, in that research, there was just a handful of organizations that had the co-director model, and it's too small to be able to represent the data in any reliable way. It's like 2 or 3 organizations. And so as we're looking at the data around executive directors, we're actually missing that component, but we do want to call that out. It's not going to be in the data report, but we want to call it out as an emerging model. And I don't think we have data. I'm actually not seeing data on the success of that model or the impact of that model, but it is certainly becoming more prevalent. And it's a way to try to address the kind of overwhelming nature of these leadership roles in the sector, especially right now. So I think that the story is not written, and we don't have a lot of resources around it, but we are starting to engage with organizations that use co-leadership models. In terms of community-centric fundraising, I think that's also an area where there are people in our community that are leading that discussion on a nationwide basis now. And of course, the people that are participating in that discussion are growing all of the time. There are elements of community-centric fundraising that I think are not really divergent from the kind of origins and history of fundraising. But it's a bit of a backlash to the way in which fundraising started to be more centered on donors, and to the culture of fundraising that puts the donor at the center rather than the community at the center. With Give Big, we really see that as a form of community-centric fundraising, because it's people in community reaching out to their neighbors and friends and family. It's people telling their own story, whether that's a story that caused them to be a donor, or they were a recipient of the services or a participant in the organization. So it's a very personalized level of giving, and it attracts a very broad array of donors, from the $10 donor to the $10,000 donor. So it is an active part of the way in which we're building the Washington Gives platform to kind of support that approach to fundraising.
I'll just add, as Camille, is that the other part of my job is Washington Gives and managing that program. I try to stay in the loop with the community-centric fundraising folks to see what they're releasing, as well as trying to build that in to what we are explaining to nonprofits. that every gift of every letter of every level matters, that they need to be listening to not just their donors, but also their clients, that they need to be aware of the context in which they're fundraising. We've also, I've reached out to them before about doing some standalone trainings. Hasn't quite come to fruition, but still working on that. We really just want to make sure that folks are in all ways considering their inherent biases, that they're considering the impact of what they're doing to fundraise. You know, that's really part of the larger model. And I'm really pleased that we have such a large platform to amplify effective and ethical fundraising to our nonprofit community through Washington Gives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to share anything that you're noticing in the environment that you think would kind of help develop this storyline for our immediate future. What are you seeing? What are you hearing from nonprofit leaders? What are you worrying about?
I do see that Peter's got his hand raised, but that is an excellent question. I'm going to write that down to sweep back to it.
Go ahead, Peter. You're muted, Peter. Still muted. We're not hearing you.
Unmute. Yes, just looking at the time of COVID and how hard it was on businesses and how many went out of business, I was wondering if it was a difficult year or year and a half in terms of nonprofit organizations, just in terms of their own survival, and or if people were looking at more, had any interest in more efforts to merge or restructure their organizations and as a way of surviving these, difficult times. Do you see any trends in that area?
No trends around the mergers. I think that's going to happen next. I think one of the things that is kind of contradictory about COVID and nonprofits is from the data that we have in the wage and benefits survey, which is only King County, mind you. So and because it's wage and benefit survey, it's only organizations that have paid staff. But in that research, 57% of organizations had come out of the last year with the same or more revenue. There are many organizations that have significantly more revenue as a result of all the philanthropic giving and obviously government funding going up. That is very unevenly shared in the nonprofit community. In fact, one of the criticisms I would have of the way that government has responded is that the nonprofit sector is so invisible to government in our state, and to some extent at the local level, that they only think of nonprofits as a kind of secondary to businesses. So while we gave out tens of millions of dollars to any business in Washington state, cash outside of the PPP loans, which we help nonprofits get, but just cash grants, any business in the state, with the exception of like the adult entertainment business, could qualify and get money. There were only very specific categories of nonprofits that were permitted grants. Arts had 3 shots at the well, which makes some sense because the arts sector was by far the most negatively impacted by COVID, but still 3 times that there were funding opportunities for the arts. There was funding for BIPOC organizations, there was funding for youth organizations, and a few other just kind of specialized kind of oddities of odd things that for some reason the Department of Commerce decided to fund. But I'll give you the example of if you were a company that rented bikes to people for recreational purposes, you could get money from the state. But if you were Bike Works and you were helping kids learn how to rebuild bikes, or helping encourage the use of bikes or something, there were not funds. or if you were a dog walking business, you could get funds from the state. But if you were an animal rescue business, you couldn't get funds from the state. You know, if you're an animal rescue nonprofit, there was no support. There's no support if you rented out boats for recreation, you could get funding from the state. But if you were preserving streams or, preserving the fisheries, there was no funding from the state. So we really saw how poorly the nonprofit sector stands in the eyes of government. And when they do interact with the sector, it's really clear they don't understand the sector. So that's something that I would say was a real lesson learned in COVID. But unlike the Great Recession, where nonprofits suffered terribly and for a really long time, it took about twice as long for nonprofits to recover from the Great Recession as for businesses. What we're seeing is this very different and very diverse result during COVID, with many organizations growing by leaps and bounds, hiring, dozens of new employees, having a lot of new revenue, and then volunteer-based organizations being essentially left behind, even though they have expenses too, no support for them. And then other types of organizations having differential impacts, so membership organizations, schools, the arts having the most severe impact. We saw very few organizations go out of business, very, very few. And I think you're set to your second question, the mergers will come, or the idea of mergers will come if funders support and incentivize that. And it will come as smaller organizations that have gotten big infusions of dollars look to scale and build their impact. So probably 2 or 3 years down the line. And we have a proposal for that, by the way, Peter, for how to help organizations do mergers that the Ballmer Group asked us to develop, but then they dropped and haven't funded. So other comments or questions? Feel free to just share your own perspective on any of these topics. Anything about 501 Commons that you're curious about?
The one thing I've learned from my grad school classes online is they have to wait like an uncomfortably long amount of time before people will talk. So I'm going to do that now.
Well, I will break the silence, but only to point out another way in which Service Corps members and our board members hear this from us on a regular basis can be helpful to 501 Commons is we are always looking for staff. We have 4 positions open right now. There's some positions that we're pretty much just going to have open continuously because we have a lot of demand for growth in particularly our data solutions practice, our HR practice, which is growing by leaps and bounds. Financial services can always grow. There are people at the doorstep or able to step to the doorstep with financial services. So we are looking, you can just always assume that 501 Commons is hiring. And if you know people that are interested in doing this kind of work, for people who have had successful careers in, for instance, a field like HR, moving to being a 501 consultant can be a real, win-win for them and for us because they no longer have the management responsibilities of managing an HR shop or being sort of internal in an organization. So they have this very interesting work of working with multiple clients, of spreading their expertise, to meet the needs of variable clients. but also being on a team of colleagues, which is an experience that most people in IT roles or even data roles in particularly in nonprofit organizations or IT roles, IT, HR, data roles, they're often in fairly isolated roles, and they don't have colleagues within the organization. So these jobs are really fantastic. They are at this point essentially entirely virtual, but they will always be the majority of the time executed virtually. We hope to get back to where we can certainly meet clients face to face and have periodic check-ins face to face with clients, but the work will continue to be virtual work. So I think that it has a lot to recommend it. Although the data says, part of the shift that's happening nationally is people expect to have virtual work options in their future, and they're willing to take pay cuts and change jobs to get it. And so I think we are really well positioned to be the beneficiaries of the turnover tsunami. And as we do that, we're putting particular emphasis on recruiting diverse candidates to the organization. We all benefit greatly from being in a diverse and multicultural organization. I think it's part of the joy of this organization, and we want to maintain and grow that. So pass the word. You don't have to know the details about the position. You can just let somebody know to get in touch with us to just investigate something, or let us know that there's somebody who might be interested in hearing about a job opportunity we have.
And it's the same really with our service corps recruitment. We're especially trying to have a service corps that more accurately reflects our communities that we're serving, and have folks that have more lived experience, especially with like the same types of lives and topics of the clients, right? And one of the best ways to do that is to actually have service corps members who have served and worked with 501 Commons to reach out to their wider networks and invite them in. If anyone ever has any questions about that, obviously we have the application on the website, but I'm happy to always meet with folks if they have questions about the service corps, or you just want to have a nice little handoff, just send them to Camille, and I'm happy to, help them become comfortable or learn more about the service corps. Nancy, you kind of talked about, besides the recruitment essentially for either staff or for service corps members, and obviously besides serving on projects with 501 Commons, are there other ways that service corps members can support 501 Commons and our larger mission of really amplifying the nonprofit sector?
Well, I was pointing to the fact that these internal roles are becoming increasingly important. We're taking on so many very diverse activities, and they're coming at us so fast. We don't even have time to hire for them. I mean, the example of Kai stepping into the IT manager's role as an example, or Katie stepping in when Evan was promoted. We have a new HRIS system, a data system, or operationalized system for HR that we're bringing on next year. That's a huge task, and Evan has like 2 minutes left in his day, I'm sure. And right now we only have a little borrowed HR time from our HR practice. And so we need people who will step in and help us implement that. And Evan just told me yesterday, Amanda Baker is our first volunteer to do that work. So in that lovely way that 501 Commons just kind of keeps building the family, Amanda has gone from being our deputy director and a great support to Evan as he's made this transition to now joining as a volunteer. But we need other help with that. We need help right now with recruiting, and so reaching out to service corps members to help us with recruiting. So I just think there's, at any point in time, there's 24 projects that we are missing the financial wherewithal or the staff capacity to do the way that they need to be done. And so those are, you know, internal roles, but they're ultimately roles to accomplish the same purpose of amplifying the success of nonprofits.
Yeah, I will definitely say when John and Dan came to us about the exec program with this idea and this like ability to contribute their time and expertise, we were really able to launch it relatively quickly with their support and working together with 501 Commons staff. So, you know, sometimes we don't really know what capacity, like we can create, I could have created, or Jan could have created an exec to exec program on our own and then tried to recruit for that role. But that's less likely to be as effective as, you know, volunteers with a vision and capacity to approach us and see how we can partner. That can be more effective, I think. So definitely like reach out to us if there's something that you're seeing in the sector where there's a need and that you think that you can help bridge that gap with our support and with, you know, bringing on other Service Corps members who might be able to serve as volunteers, but not necessarily as program managers, essentially.
Well, we're pretty much at time here, folks, so we might give you back a minute of your day at least. But this has been delightful, not as delightful as being able to sit around a table and share food with everyone and, you know, give you hugs. But it has nevertheless been quite a delight, and many of you are treasured members of our community. So thank you to all the award winners. Thank you to Camille for making all this happen in the middle of everything else she has to do. We really honor all of you who recognized today, but for others of you who are on with us today, we honor you as well. And we thank you for taking some time from your day to spend it with us.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you everyone for coming, echoing what Nancy said. I also want to say thank you to like some of the new Service Corps members who may be in the audience today. This is such a great opportunity, and I hope that this has excited you. Sometimes it can take a little bit to kind of get on your first project. There's a little bit of a time lag, but I'm so excited to continue to work with y'all and for the rest of 501 Commons to get you on projects. Oh, that's an interesting question from Kathleen.
What's the question? Stipends to, oh, that's an interesting idea, Kathleen. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something.
Yeah, I think, you know, just in philanthropy, you know, more and more, every time we ask a person of color to contribute their time, we provide stipends. And so that's kind of become a cultural norm in some way. And I think that's, maybe there's a possibility of raising a fund and you know, and allowing that to happen.
Yeah, that's, yeah. I was actually just reading a community-centric fundraising blog post about adding they just added like a tip function, but obviously I think stipends make more sense considering our line of work. Thank you for bringing that up, Kathleen. Well, I'm gonna stop the recording now just to